Welcome to the Overcomers Overcoming podcast series, where we profile those who are overcoming and those who have overcome various life topics. I am Ron Cooper, along with my wife and business partner, Marty, of the Cooper Culture, who is sponsoring this series. Many people who have overcome life events have inspired me to produce this series. We want you to know you are not alone in whatever you're experiencing. Life has taught me that everyone has a story that someone needs to hear. Join us as we profile those who choose to be a lifestyle chainbreaker. Let's engage their story to inspire us and others within our circle of influence. Welcome to our podcast series, Overcomers Overcoming, where we discuss people who have overcome various life topics. Marty is with me, my wife and business partner. I am Ron Cooper. We have as a special guest today Coach Rick Sneade. Rick is the head coach of the Calvert High School football team. Rick, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Coach, Marty and I have been with you several years. We are generally aware of your life and some of the past that you've been through. I will tell you that Marty and I both admire you personally, and I mean that very sincerely. You've overcome a lot, and I think our listeners could benefit from just enough of your backstory. Would you be willing to share with us some of the events? It seemed to me maybe there are three major events that have occurred in your life. Would you be able would you be willing to share with us just enough of that to give us all an appreciation of what you've been through, and then most importantly, what we've learned, what you have learned from the past from which we can benefit, that if we were to encounter anyone that has been through or is going through what you have been through, how might we benefit them? Coach, over to you.
Well, thank you. I would say that it's really neat when I look back to where I am now and how I got here, and chronologically speak to the things that had the greatest impact on my life. The first one would be when I was 4 years old. We moved to Calvert County, and that move happened because in 1975, just after I was shortly born, my grandfather, Wilson Sneade, decided to change his entire career path and get out of the banking business in the Baltimore area and move down to North Beach and buy a hardware store. Him and my uncle, my mom's younger brother, the youngest child of the four, decided to come down here off the beaten track to a place called Calvert County with one stoplight and look at this hardware store and talk about possibly buying it. They did, and they bought it, and that moment has a distinct impact on me and where I am right now. And so that starts everything, because that selfless sacrifice that my grandfather decided to do, because he didn't just take over a hardware business, he took over a really downtrodden and dying community. And then through my grandmother and his vision of creating community through this hardware store, they grew something, and they showed an example of servant leadership through a business and taking care of others that was modeled for me. And then 4 years later, as I said, we moved down there just around the corner from the store, so that way on the weekends my parents could help out in running the business, which is just about what everybody did in the immediate family. They moved down to Calvert County to help out with the business where we could. And so watching my grandfather go through that and do that was something that just gave me a great deal of value and pride in seeing that happen. Now, through that process of living in Calvert County, I can also remember, though, always going to church on Sundays, finding churches that we would go to, Riverdale Baptist, Friendship Community Baptist Church, and, growing up in a Christian home, seeing that that's modeled, always having strong morals and values. Everybody on the outside would think that everything was kosher and good to go. The issue, though, and I didn't quite understand the manifestation of the issue, or how bad the issue was that my father was not a healthy person. And in fact, our family dynamic was very toxic. He was verbally and sexually abusive to my mom and to my sisters and I. And consequently, you could see the hurt that was being caused to the family. But my mom, being a very loyal believer, being a very loyal wife, believed that the best thing for the family was to stay together and to give him another chance. And so they would separate occasionally. My father would promise to go into counseling. He would do certain things to quote unquote work on his behaviors and change his ways. We would then have a moment where we'd have this ascension to going to church and be even greater Christians in the church and practice things and get involved in the church to a greater degree, and only to be let down again where something would happen. And my mom, again, being the woman that she was and how much she cared for the family, the nuclear family, and how it was supposed to be designed to be, she wouldn't give up on the family, wouldn't give up on him. By the time I was 13, things started to make more sense to me that this was not correct, and there was a hedge that was being built between me and my father because there were certain things that I didn't realize at the time, but I needed as a young man that I wasn't getting from my father. And so now when things would happen and I'd see the hurt, I would become hardened and less I would be more reluctant to allow him to come back in the house. Mm-hmm. He would say some really outlandish things to me, and they were just so far-fetched that they just drove stronger nails into the things that I believed said that this man is not my father. He is my father in the state that he's my biological parent, but he's not acting in a way that's becoming what a father should act.
Let me interject right here, Coach. If I'm discerning you correctly, Wilson Sneade was your maternal grandfather?
Of my grandmother, yep. My mom, yep.
Yep, and your mom's dad. And so you saw values in him that you admired but did not see as almost the opposite in what you were seeing in your dad. Would that be a fair characterization?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's almost to the point that my name up until April of 2000, or shortly before that, was John Richard Bell III. And then I changed my name, not out of spite or hate towards my father, because I really don't have any of that. It was more to honor my grandfather and take on his name and my mom's maiden name to pay homage to them and the values that I felt that I had learned most from my mom's side of the family. So then that's when I became Richard Wilson Sneade. Wilson for my grandfather, Richard, of course, tying me back into who I've always been, which is Rick, and then Sneade.
So I think I remember hearing you say at one point in your yearbook you were John Richard Bell the third,
yep.
And now through legal means you changed your name. You're adopted into, so to speak, or maybe illegally, the Sneade family. So that's
yes.
And so
very true.
You just felt that ridding yourself of that previous name is what had to. That was a separation of the past, so to speak. Am I characterizing that correctly?
Well, it was and it wasn't. In that, to me, as the story progresses, and I'll get to that in a minute, the changing the name was not to be antagonistic to what I had gone through in the past, but more so of an honoring of what I had experienced, through the qualities and benefits of being around such great people and my grandfather and grandmother and my aunts and uncles on mom's side. And that's what it was. And that's what it's always been, because, at 13, things start to progress to a point where I was like, this isn't right. And Mom would let him back in. I became hardened, and, me being the oldest, my sisters each being, 4 years apart from each other. So Kim, the second oldest, the middle child, she's 4 years behind me. Then Karen is 8 years behind me. We start to move in a direction where we're starting to move beyond and move towards the next big phase of our own lives, graduate from high school, going to college. That eventually, I was at 22 years old, and I had to make a decision on what we were going to do. But the backtrack, because I didn't want to miss this part of the story, it's very, very important. At 16 years old, okay, once again, we're going through another separation. At this point, through the church we're going to, the problems and the issues are more open. You know, there's extended friends in our church family that understand what's going on in our home. And they're trying to mediate, and they're trying to help. Guys that are friends with my father, women that are friends with my mother, they're trying to help the family along. And in that process, there was a gentleman named Tim Piles and his wife. Wife was friends with my mom. Tim was friends with my father. And I can't speak to what he saw in me, but I think that through the conversations, maybe the amount of anguish and pain that I was feeling through this, and maybe the hardness that I was developing, was enough for him to say, you know, maybe I can help him. And he was coaching a Little League baseball team. His son, Ray Piles, was playing Little League baseball. And at the time, I was a baseball player in high school too, but I had to give it up because my father would be in and out of work, partly because his mind wasn't right, and I'd have to work to make ends meet for myself. And so I didn't have the chance to play baseball. Fortunately, I was able to play football all the way through high school, but I couldn't play baseball. But here I am free. And he reached out and asked if I'd be interested in helping coach, you know, and gave me an opportunity to become a mentor to me, you know, bring me out at 16 years old, have me sit there, you know, and help coach baseball. And that was truly another pivotal point in my life. You know, so you have this opportunity where we moved to Calvert County, and then now you have this opportunity where I get to coach. Mm-hmm. Two very distinct moments in my life. And so I started coaching at 16 Little League baseball, and I fell in absolute love with it. And now I start seeing the things I learned in church, and I start to try to use the things I learned in church. I mean, at that point, growing up in a church, I heard and realized the things that you should do to be right, you know, to be quote unquote more godly. And so I used the platform as coaching football or baseball, Little League baseball, to mentor and help impose, you know, a better way of doing things, mm-hmm. you know, young baseball players. And didn't do it as intentionally, but it was a way for me to pour out in that way what I thought things should be good. Did not realize that I'm actually using it as therapy, as an escape from things I was going through at home. I did not realize that I was actually living vicariously through what I should see at home on a baseball diamond. That progressed in coaching in high school, Little League, you know, coaching in high school as a JV football coach at the school I graduated from. And at 22 years old, I'm now coaching. And I am literally going to school at University of Maryland after graduating from community college with an associate's degree. I am now managing at UPS, haven't even graduated, but managing at UPS, working a night job. I'm working, for a catering company out of Annapolis. I mean, I'm hustling. And I've got the 1,000-yard stare, as they say, focused on getting all these things taken care of so I can move on to the biggest thing in my chapter. And me doing that, I've got blinders on, and I'm not seeing all the other things on the outside. And, we came to a screeching halt, you know, because now my family, my mom's side of the family, is having a meeting, and they bring me into the meeting, and they're like, Rick, this has got to stop. You know, you're moving on. Your sister Karen, she's going to college at Salisbury. Kim has moved on, you know, and she's gotten serious in a relationship. You and your mom are here. And your mom, if she doesn't get out of this situation, this relationship now, how's she going to get out of it later on when no one's here?
Let me see if I can characterize your feelings up to this point, Rick, that, this is just an inspiring story. Wilson Sneade was your grandfather, and all the values that I'm going to say that he established in his family, that was a model for you, if I could use that term. Then there was Tim Piles, the coach, who he was attracted to you. He could see it. What I sense here is a relationship that was building with people who genuinely cared for and about you. Mm-hmm. But Coach, I want to ask you, at thinking back to your life 16 to 22 years old, did you know what was happening, or was it only through Tim Piles and your family that they helped you realize what, from your description, what I'm discerning is the degradation of your outlook? And I don't know that I've accurately characterized that, but it seems that what you're describing is it took other people to help you realize, to be aware of what was happening in your life. Have I characterized that correctly?
You're speaking about the level of, I guess, the level of dysfunction in my family home.
I'm going to call it yes. You did use the word dysfunctionality. Mm-hmm. Your mom was seeing that, and it sounds like some others saw it, but they didn't. They were. It sounds as if they wanted to help you realize what was happening, because you were on the pointy end, so to speak. You were the one that's being affected, maybe at least as much as your mom was, it seems. Am I hearing this correctly?
It could be. I think that, there was a couple things in that. Like Mr. Powell's, his relationship with me, as I look back on it now, was up until that point, we used to have like regular father and son retreats. We used to do things like this where the men of the church with their sons would interact and work together. And so Mr. Powell's and Miss Powell's had seen me for a long time. They'd watch me play baseball. I was friends with, their older daughter. She was a year older than me. We both played sports at the high school at the same time. So they were aware of me. So they probably saw my passion. They saw my drive and my energy and my willingness to do things morally correct. And I guess maybe they felt that, while going through this, for me to be in that state of mind, in spite of the fact of the dysfunctionality at home, maybe that's what drew them to me. Maybe that's what drew my grandfather to sit down and call me out and say, you've got to do something at 22 years old. Mm-hmm. I can speak that I knew that something was wrong, and I was just drawing a block to it because, at 22 years, my mom would always, bring them back in. And I'm not at all. I mean, I have to constantly, because she'll beat herself up over the fact that she did that time and time again. Mm-hmm. But I look at that and I see the tremendous amount of courage and trust and faith she has in the sanctity of marriage, being willing to forgive and move on and try to keep that thing together. Now, in the process, we all were harmed a little bit more, but I think there's a great story there to show how intentional my mom was to try to keep this thing together. Mm-hmm. But me being a young man, my heart got hardened. I got resistant. I drew up a barrier, and I ended up diverting because I wasn't going to focus energy in a spot that none of it was being reciprocated. Why am I going to spend my wheels here when it's counterproductive? When I've got this in front of me, I'm coaching and I'm making an impact in these kids' lives. There got to a point at 20 years old, the love that my father should have for me, his wife, and his other two children, my sisters, was not enough for him to correct himself. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to sit here and spin my wheels anymore in that direction. And that's where my mind was. But I was on my own program. I mean, I was like looking down the road and seeing what I'm going to do it myself to create a better future for me. Mm-hmm. Seeing the financial hardships my parents went through for so many years, like I'm going to get a job, I'm going to have a career that I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. I'm going to have a wife, I'm going to have a family where I'm not going to do the things my dad did to them. Mm-hmm. So 22 years old though, we're sitting at the kitchen table on 2nd Street across from the hardware store that Grandpa, had bought years ago. And the home that they built that we ended up buying and moving into after Grandpa built a home down in Breezy Point area. And my grandfather and my uncles and my aunts are sitting there with my mom, and they're like, you have to do something.
Coach, you're at a critical juncture in your life. It sounds like your family is at the point where we have to make a very, very difficult decision. Is that where at this point in this backstory, is that where you are?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Coach, I'm going to recommend that we pick this up in the next episode. Would you be willing to stay and continue this to its conclusion and just how you work through all this?
Absolutely, yeah.
let's stay together for the next episode, Coach. I'm intrigued, and I'm sure our listeners are as well.
Awesome. Good.
Contact us at ron@thecooperculture.com or marty@thecooperculture.com if you would like to get more information, or if you would like to discuss a strategic approach to how to help someone who needs encouragement to overcome their current life challenge. We're here to work with you, to help you and those within your circle of influence to overcome life obstacles. Marty and I have produced digital courses on relationships, interviewing skills, and overcoming financial challenges in dating and marriages that you can find by clicking on the store in the introductory page of this podcast series. We hope you will find these resources useful in your life journey. We look forward to establishing a dialogue with you, as our heart's desire is to establish a meaningful relationship with others. Let's all lead from and with the heart to show others we genuinely care.